Hello and welcome, and we are here to talk about Wakanda Forever, Black Panther 2. And we're also going to go ahead and fill this out with ranking all the things that we've seen so far in Phase 4. I'm Ed Fries, or Old Ed, and I'm joined by Cody Defoe and Andre. Andre. Nope. Hello, gentlemen. It's always good. Asher, come here. We don't have to do a pose. It's fine. Hi, Asher. You're watching. So, hi, Astrid. Oh, fine. Let's do the pose for Astrid so she doesn't get mad at us. Okay.
Yeah, I'll do it. I do it every time somebody intros me.
So we're here to talk about Wakanda Forever. I'm going to let you guys go ahead and start, but we're going to do a brief non-spoiler section review in the beginning to kind of just talk about the movie in broad terms. And then we'll go ahead and get into a small spoiler review afterwards.
Okay. So I go into this with a lot of expectation personally, because the first one was amazing, and then everything they've done building up to this, and it's kind of supposed to be to end Phase 4, other than the Guardian special coming in a couple weeks. But I was really satisfied, very, very satisfied with this movie. Just the portrayals for all the characters, M'Baku especially. I enjoyed him, fleshed his character out so much more in this one. It really, I really, and all the characters really fleshed him out. The Queen, she captivated me in this movie, and it just, I thought, absolutely wonderful movie.
Yeah, absolutely. I came into it with just as high of expectations for it. The way the trailer hyped it up, the way everything, all of the hype being built by Marvel and by the fan base for what's to come. Who's it going to be? How are they going to do this without Chadwick Boseman? What should we expect? How well will it be done without Chadwick in the movie? I think they killed it. I think everybody played their part perfectly. I think Danae Guerrera is amazing at everything I've ever seen her in. I think she was just absolutely fantastic in her role here. I think Queen Ramonda was played so well. Again, M'Baku, like you said. But even just Shuri, too, taking the role and the sister who's lost her brother and taking that to a whole nother level, just making us feel what she was going through. And then even just Namor. The portrayal of Namor and the portrayal of their whole world and how this plays in, how they are now involved in everything. It was one of the best storytelling pieces of the Marvel Universe that I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much more to say. Dealing with grief is such a hard thing to do, and everybody does it differently. And I love how this movie shows different ways of dealing with grief and dealing with pain. And honestly, it's been the Phase 4 motto of, if for people who know, in Phase 2, Marvel decided to have a little bit of fun. And in every movie, somebody lost an arm or something like that as a nod to Star Wars. And if you look back, you actually see it. Everybody loses an arm or a hand or something like that in those movies. Phase 4 seems like everybody dealing with pain and grief and loss. Now, yes, because of the blip and because of 5 years going by, that's obvious that it's a nice, tie around to everything dealing with that. But there's just so much of it in this movie. And it was the audience for the first time dealing with pain and grief. And they did such a great job of reworking this script to not feel like it was the same movie we would have seen with or without Chadwick. But at parts, I felt like it was almost similar to the same movie we would have seen either way. There were obviously some surprises that I was really excited for that I hadn't heard. And we'll get into that in the spoiler section. But just top to bottom, this movie was captivating and beautiful. I've also never been in a Marvel movie where at portions you can hear a pin drop.
Yeah.
And-
Oh, dude, there was quiet points in my theater, but it wasn't like, oh, I'm bored. It was like, oh, like people were like mesmerized.
In when the Marvel fanfare rolls, and this isn't a spoiler because it's in the first Black Panther as well. When the Marvel fanfare rolls, that whole section where they have all the pictures of Chadwick Boseman, my theater literally, you couldn't hear anybody breathe. In a full loaded opening night cinema, you couldn't hear people breathe. That's how quiet that moment was.
Yeah, it was emotional. Like I saw it, I kind of got a bit misty eyed. I'm like, oh, like they gave him the Stan Lee treatment because you got to remember, was it Endgame or was it Infinity War? One of them
Captain Marvel.
gave. Oh, Captain Marvel, that was it. They gave it all to Stan, and they give it all to Chadwick. In this one was it brought a little bit couple tears to my eyes.
Yeah, absolutely. My theater was the same, just completely silent for a lot of that opening section of the movie. There was just so much that everyone had to take in and digest right off the bat that it was. And again, throughout the movie, there were different points, just those moments that hit where they drop the music and you don't necessarily notice the drop in music until you notice that you're sitting in total complete silence.
Yep. We're going to go ahead and move to the spoiler section because I think the more we talk, the more we're just going to jump into it anyways. So we might as well just go ahead and say it. Spoiler warning now. If you haven't seen the movie and you're watching this, Astrid, this is your cue to turn the volume down. I'm using her as an example because she told me she's going to watch, even though she hasn't seen the movie. So I'm calling her out because it's fun. But no, for anybody who hasn't seen the movie, this is your opportunity. Go ahead and turn this off. Come back when you've seen the movie, or wait till you start seeing us talk about Phase 4.
There'll be a banner. It'll say Phase 4.
Yeah. There will be a banner. Do we want to just start at the beginning?
Yeah.
And move our way and just hit different points as we go?
Yeah, that'd be.
So the beginning of the movie starts, in just an absolute deluge of a scene where we see Shuri trying to fix something. And we find out that Chadwick is sick, that T'Challa is sick, and he has an undisclosed illness, and he's dying. And they're trying to get a replica of the herb to save his life. And I just love that that's the route they decided to go. It's not somebody killed him. He didn't get assassinated. Like, I didn't know how they were going to do it. And they went undisclosed illness to kind of just tie that loop off and just go ahead and do it. And I thought that was a really interesting choice.
Yeah, because if you had somebody come back and kill him or come in and kill him, I think it would have been almost unsatisfying in a sense. I think it mirrors real life in the fact that he got sick and died. I like the fact that they mirror that in reality with Chadwick's actual passing. It made it feel real.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's exactly my thought coming into it, was like, oh, so we're actually completely bringing Chadwick's illness into T'Challa's character, basically. That's what it felt like sitting there, was like they're trying to cure his illness with Wakandan medicine, basically. And she's not in time. She can't figure out the formula to artificially recreate the heart-shaped herb in time to get to him.
Yeah, it was, and the moment of Queen Ramonda walking in there, Angela Bassett walking in, being like, "You've run out of time." Also, not knowing Trevor Noah. Trevor Noah is the guy who does the AI in this movie. I didn't realize that until I watched somebody else's review of the movie. Yep, The AI is comedian Trevor Noah, the host of The Daily Show.
I didn't realize that.
who actually speaks Tussa, which I think is really interesting, considering that's the language that they use for the Wakandan language is actually Tussa. It's an African dialect, primarily in South Africa. But yeah, I thought it was really
interesting.
fun. Yeah, it's a small one, but it's something I saw in somebody else's review, and I'm like, I'm going to remember that because I didn't realize that. I thought it was interesting that he's like, don't you think you should be there at his bedside? And she's like, no, I have to save him. I have to save him. And that emotional pull of her thinking that she had to be the one to save him, as opposed to being there and just being at his side for his last moments. It's just another plot point that I think I didn't see coming, and I really thought it was interesting.
Yeah, and I think it pulled to what influenced her the rest of the movie in her regret. But I think she regretted not being with him there with him at the end, or at his end, in a sense too. I think there's multiple regrets for her in this movie.
Yeah, it definitely built to their character arcs that I think Queen Ramonda being there, seeing it happen, but also seeing what her daughter was going through played into her protective angle there. And I think Shuri going through that of not being there and not being able to do anything to save him, and with all of her technological expertise and all of her knowledge and everything she can do, she just couldn't do that one thing. And I think it was because I feel like it was the very first line of the very first open of the movie was her praying to their god, their ancestors, to help her find the solution in time. And that hit home for me because when I was a kid and going through the loss of my grandfather was when I really tried to reach to religion. And I was in that same position as Suri, saying, please don't let me lose him. Help me save him. And so that hit really hard for me, hearing her right off the bat, that first line of the movie.
Yeah, I dealt with the same sort of thing earlier this year. So that the grief hit me hard, and the grief, feeling that grief in this movie, I related to it so much.
Yeah. Let's talk a bit now here. We're going to kind of jump around as we go through this review. Let's talk about Namor the Submariner. This was an incredible interpretation of the character. I'm not a big comic book guy. I read comics as a kid, but it wasn't something like I didn't go to the comic book shop and every week read a bunch of the comics and sit there. I had comics when I was a kid and I liked comics, but I didn't read them all. So I didn't know all these characters. This was the introduction to Namor for me. And I thought they absolutely hit a home run. This character was so well put together that throughout the movie they gave you everything you needed to know about him at the perfect moment. You know, like they gave you his origin story without it feeling like an origin story because he's just telling a story to Shuri. It felt like his character had a purpose. He wasn't just a disposable Marvel villain number 14 or 35, whatever the villain they're on. And we can all agree, Marvel has a villain problem. Marvel
There's been very few, yeah. There's been very few that are indelible in Marvel, like MCU at least. But he came across as a truly, like, he felt like a hero in a sense to his people, because he's not looked at as a villain by everyone. His entire people look at him as a god, as a hero, as their savior. And I think that's what has differentiated him a big part for me from the rest of the villains, is that he's looked at as the conquering hero on his side. And so to him, when he's doing his things for his people, he's not doing it because I want to take over the world. I want to destroy everybody. Yes, he wants to make the surface world pay for some of the things they're doing and just what they're doing. But he's making he's protecting his people, and in a way, as a villain, it makes him almost a sympathetic villain in a sense.
Yes, he wants to make the world burn, but he wants to make the world burn to protect his people. Because every time they've come to the surface, they've seen how violent and dangerous and selfish the surface world can be, and now they're starting to encroach on his territory. So he wants to do it to protect his people. I don't necessarily see as much of the villain problem with Marvel. I think they do a really good job of creating sympathy for the reasons why their villains are doing things. A lot
Yes,
of the
but then
times
they kill them all.
I mean, they're
Unlike
still
DC,
villains.
their
You can't
villains
keep your
don't go
villains
away
hanging
and
around.
come back.
You can't
Unlike
keep your
DC,
villains
the
coming
villains
back
don't go
over and
away and
over.
come back. Sorry, I apologize for interrupting you.
You can't keep them coming back over and over, because then you just get stuck in a loop of the same villain like they did with Loki. Eventually, you have to kill your villains off. Otherwise, you're just creating the same movie 18 times because you've created a sympathetic villain and you have Loki running the story and being cheered over your heroes. That's where you run into a problem with a villain.
Yeah, I agree with that one. But like I think Marvel has like, have there been some villains that have been underwhelming to me, a la Thor Ragnarok? Yeah, but there's some that have really taken like and really moved me in a lot of other movies. It's just I think they finally created a villain. And again, the one time they're keeping the villain alive and keeping him going forward in a sense, he still has that motivation to say screw you to everybody, even though he came out on the losing end in this movie.
The thing with Namor too is historically he hasn't just been a villain, right? Historically he's been a hero in his own right and had his own comics written about him as a hero. He's always been one of those characters in Marvel history who toes that line. He will be the hero and he will fight with the Avengers and everybody else to protect the world, but he will also be the villain who fights against the heroes too at times, because they have differing views on surface versus water like dwelling. So obviously he's got a bigger part to play here. He's got a much bigger story in the future of the MCU, I think, but it's a great way for us to meet him in that way of bringing him in as the villain to Wakanda and then having him grow from just I hate all surface dwellers to okay, maybe these people can, help me somehow else.
Yeah. Now we're going to move on a little bit again. Let's talk about, while we're talking about Namor, let's talk about how amazingly, in my mind, they put together Talokan. Renaming Atlantis Talokan and going ahead and trying not to confuse the audience. Thank you, Marvel, for not trying to confuse the audience so we don't have Atlantis. We're like, well, where's Aquaman? Why isn't he here? Because that would happen if they both both had an Atlantis. But Andre, why don't you go ahead and talk to us about your thoughts on Talokan and the people of Talokan?
I very much enjoyed the fact that they took from Mayan culture instead of going the route. Like, yes, we all know Namor was created first. Like, if you look at comics, Namor was created first, and Aquaman was creation to rival him for DC. But so many more people, like by history, even before the Aquaman movies and the Aquaman movie came out, he was the character that's most well known. And I think if Marvel had done if they had done Atlantis and everything with Namor, I think a lot of people would have just been like, but I like the fact that they go into Mayan culture. I can't remember the name again. Whatever.
Talokan.
Talokan. I'm terrible with that. Keeping those names in my head. But
it's why I haven't pronounced the name of Namor's actor, because I can't pronounce it properly.
And showing the underwater civilization, but it looking like Mayan culture, like looking like old Mayan buildings and things like that. And I really enjoyed the fact and that they took from that culture and gave us something different instead of just getting Aquaman Marvel style.
Yeah, I think obviously that's a big part of it too. We saw it in the Doctor Strange multiverse movie too, that they have to rename things once in a while because they want to own marketing rights for their own stuff. And so if Atlantis is already being used by Aquaman, obviously they're not going to be able to copyright Atlantis in any way, shape, or form. So they have to cover that. But they also they really, really gave Namor a much more well-rounded backstory, I think, too. I think when he first came out, he was just, oh yeah, a fish man with the power to control sea creatures, and cool, let's give him wings on his feet. It really felt like they gave him a heart, they gave him a culture, they gave him a reason to be that maybe wasn't there when he was originally created. I did have one slight knock on Talokan itself, and that was that I didn't understand why everybody fighting in the army for him, like when they were attacking and whatnot, why everybody that came to the surface with him was blue. But when we were down in Talokan, we're looking around and everybody's the same like color as him. There's no more blue people down in the actual city itself. I'm like, wait, why are they not blue anymore?
I think they kind of explain that a little bit, like where he can breathe on land because he was born of it. They all took the stuff. I think it's just due to them do a breathing thing because they had to use the evaporation chamber for him. I think it's a breathing thing that when they're in air, their skin turns blue, but when they're engulfed in water, it turns back to normal. I think that's pretty much the gist of it. There's no real true explanation to it, but yeah, I that's the way I kind of took it.
Yeah, I mean it's a small problem, but at the end of the day, I can overlook it because they did a very good job explaining so much about these people that you almost immediately understood everything you needed to.
Yeah. No, their reasons for going underwater, their ability, like how they got there, how they're living there, it all was so well done. The crazy way that you have to get to Talokan. I like the little whirlpool tunnels that they were using to travel around underwater. It was really an interesting idea and way to go about something like that. Otherwise you're swimming forever and forever between buildings. And no, you just hop on the wind tunnel and you're on your way.
Makes sense. That made sense. Like it really did.
Yep.
The visual experience of it, the visual reveal, and just all of the cultural things. And they even went through it at the end too, when they kind of did the flashbacks of stuff and like the side-by-side comparison of Wakandan culture with Talokan culture, that it really kind of drove home just how alike they were.
How advanced both of them were in a sense.
Yeah, and the advancements of vibranium helping bring everybody further ahead. Let's talk. We've talked a little bit about it. Angela Bassett's character in this movie is so incredible. Queen Ramonda is, I want to say, the second highlight of this movie for me, because Namor's character was my highlight, but then Ramonda is my second highlight. she does such an incredible job showing how to try to deal with the grief and deal with the loss, because she's coming off having lost her family for 5 years in the blip, and now she's got them back, and then T'Challa dies, and she feels like she loses her daughter in that when her daughter gets kidnapped, and seeing her take that out on the Dora Milaje and being like, no, you are no longer leading the Dora Milaje. You're out. You convinced me to let her go with you and you're gone. And having that scene where it's like, haven't I given everything? Everybody in my family is gone and I'm still just standing here. She did such an amazing job.
I feel like she really drove the first half of this movie. Like, she was the driving factor of everything that we saw play out throughout the first half of the storytelling, that her grief was the central focus. Her grief was really kind of building on Shuri's own grief. Her grief at losing Shuri when Shuri goes down to Talokan just amplified that. It really influenced and drove home Okoye's grief. It brought Nakia, I believe her name is, back into the fold and started to dive into her side of the grief, which we really don't get a full visual or understanding of until much, much later in the movie, as to what she went through and why she ended up in Haiti like she did and why she's been gone for 5 years. Just, she's the one pulling all of the strings within Wakanda, and even really trying to pull the strings of Namor, unsuccessfully, but she's trying to be the maestro of the whole story, up until the point where,
spoiler time.
Up until the point where we lose her.
Yeah, like I looked at it as like, yes, she's a driving force up until we lose her, and then but I think what they did, they have Shuri kind of building, and then they kind of have the crux point right before you take the Queen out of the movie, and Shuri's on her way up in really learning about herself and who she is. That I think it kind of is that perfect passing point from all the grief and just the wonderful job that Angela Bassett did in portraying that character. Like the speech at the UN, that was just like it pulled at you. And that the fact how she's talking about losing her everyone, losing her husband, losing her son, and then and telling them, this is why we don't want to work with you anymore. This is why we don't want to share what we have, because, and then bringing the soldiers in and saying, because all you want to do is take from us and hurt. That was just so powerful. It was so good, man. And then the way you kind of pass that off in how she dies to Shuri for the rest of the movie is so wonderful in my opinion.
Yeah. We're going to go ahead and, as we sit here, we're moving to Shuri. We're moving to kind of the halfway point in the movie. And there's a bunch of stuff that happens. We don't want to tell you everything. I mean, you've seen the movie. If you haven't seen the movie, then you shouldn't really be watching at this point anyways. But like
Astrid.
But we go ahead and we're going to talk about Shuri here and how incredible of a job she did. But I want to jump to the biggest surprise in this movie for me. So we're getting ready to battle Talokan. Shuri knows that she has to go to war with Talokan. She finally creates the heart-shaped herb. And she goes ahead and she takes it.
Using something that she got from Talokan.
Using the gift from Talokan that has the vibranium in it, which is what the missing piece that she needed to create the heart-shaped herb to such a high degree.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just that pureness of it, right? It's that pureness of not just regular vibranium, but it's that pureness from what was used to create them is used to create her.
Yeah, they're all kind of plants of the same thing. It's soil that's enriched by vibranium. It gives it that missing ingredient that she could never really, create on her own.
Yeah.
And she goes ahead and she takes her walk with the ancestors. And she doesn't T'Challa. And she doesn't see T'Chaka. and she doesn't see Queen
Doesn't see-
Ramonda. The secret I thought there's no way they could have kept. She sees Killmonger.
Dude.
They bring back Killmonger.
And he owned the screen. He was only
Oh,
on
God,
screen for less than 5 minutes. He owned that entire scene with her.
Dude, for sure. Michael B. Jordan, like, I am such a fan of him as an actor. His portrayal of Killmonger in the first one, the Creed movies, and when he showed up, like, I had heard that there was a rumor out there that, oh, maybe they're gonna that there might be a Killmonger scene, but like nobody took it seriously. Everybody's like, oh, it might it's gonna be a flashback showing maybe something in his life. But when they showed it as him being what she sees on the ancestral plane, my heart almost broke for her in a sense. Is the fact that it's pure rage. Obviously, is what she has pure, like, she has a pure hatred and rage in her heart. That's the reason she sees him. Oh.
It was such an incredible 5-minute scene where he's just going at her and being like, no, you're here because you need me. You need what I can give you. Your family couldn't do what I could do. You want to be like me. And it just absolutely changes the movie. The movie changes on the moment you see Killmonger in the ancestral plane and she's having that discussion with him. Everything changes. And it's no longer about being the Black Panther and going ahead and saving Wakanda. It's about Shuri making the world burn.
Yeah.
And I like to call back to that scene. If I think about T'Challa too much, the whole world will burn instead of me.
Mm-hmm.
And the scene with Namor where he's asking her to help him make the world burn. And she says no. When he says, I saw you talking to your mother. I know I heard what you said. And she rejects it. And then for her to go into the ancestral plane and hear the exact same thing from Killmonger, that you're here because you want revenge. You want vengeance. You want to make the ones pay who took this from you. And she
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Eye-opening scene for her too, for everybody to really see she's not the hero here. She's on the path to become a villain.
Yeah. That's what that's what my entire brain going forward through all the stuff with her in the suit, everything with her doing, I was just like, who ends up the hero in the end? I couldn't figure in my brain. I'm like, how do they make her the hero in the end? Or is she going to be the heroine? That's where I was like, I was torn in this movie.
So we kind of bypassed a little bit here because one thing throughout the first 2/3, 3/4 of this movie before we got to the to the Killmonger scene was who is going to don the mantle. The obvious choice was always Shuri. We know the comics, they've had Shuri as a Black Panther recently, but leading up and a lot of the question marks throughout the trailers and up until release day has been, who is it going to be? And I was always on board with the Shuri train. I always thought that's who it was going to be. Throughout the course of this movie, they made me question my own belief on that. There were periods in this movie where I thought Okoye could be the one to don the mantle.
Yes,
there were periods
when she got let go from the Dora Milaje.
I thought Nakia could be the one to don the mantle. There was even a brief point early in the movie where I thought maybe Queen Ramonda is the one to take the mantle there. Like, they really had me questioning throughout. They played it up so well. And, they really did center around Shuri's story, but there were enough different stories playing out that I was consistently reassessing my own guesses.
Yeah, I was the same way. Like, when they let her go from the Dora Milaje, I really thought Okoye, it was getting like, I was like, Okoye is going to be the Black Panther because she's going to end up taking the herb or doing something to get that. I'm like, it's going to be her. And then I don't know. It just, everything about it, it really, it let you, instead of that obvious way, it's like, oh, it's always going to be Shuri. It made you think. And I really, really enjoyed it. At one point, like, going into the movie, I'm like, I know there was a reveal in the trailer of the Black Panther suit, obviously being a woman. I thought maybe that was going to be a very Spider-Man-esque thing where it was actually M'Baku dropping there, and they just showed it like they re-edited it for it, because you never know with Marvel anymore, especially with with Spider-Man taking out the 2 other Spider-Man. I thought, even thinking, because like how prominent they were featuring M'Baku at points, I was like, maybe it could be him. You never know. You never knew with this movie until it was kind of getting right close to that point where it was like, no, okay, it is going to be Shuri.
Yeah.
Just to keep this moving along, let's talk a little bit about Ironheart and Dominique Thorne's performance as Riri Williams, the MIT student from Chicago, Illinois, going to Cambridge University. I thought she was a delight in this movie. It was a nice way to introduce her without making her a focal point. She felt a little forced, and I think that they probably might not have included her had Chadwick not passed away. I don't think we would have had Ironheart here if we had Chadwick Boseman.
It's possible, because I think you might have introduced the character, but not the full-on Ironheart version of the character, because I think, and doing what they did with her in this movie, I think is more to build for her to go into the Armor Wars movie in a couple of years with Don Cheadle. I think that's more what the build for her throughout the entire movie. Yeah, I enjoyed the character in her build and what she meant to help take Shuri to be a better person in this movie. It just, I think her entire arc is to build for what her future is going forward in the Marvel Universe.
Yeah, an introduction to the character. I still don't think we got the full-blown suit and character there. I think we got just a taste, just the smallest taste, and it's going to play into her character arc, that going to Wakanda and getting to work with all the advanced technology and someone like Shuri, she's already brilliant in her own right, but she's got to work with one of the best at creating a suit for herself. Even though she doesn't get to keep her suit in the end, she now has that experience to take it back home and recreate it, maybe not with vibranium, but recreate all of what she needs otherwise. And that's probably where we see the Armor Wars come in, and eventually the Ironheart TV series that we're getting.
Yeah. But I thought she was it was a fresh taste of a fresh person, giving us a new character and giving Shuri somebody that she could relate to.
Yeah.
Which was really fun and interesting.
I don't think you get the Shuri you get by the end of the movie without the influence of this girl, kind of like almost an innocent, like kind of putting a point of reference in Shuri's head of what humanity truly is.
Yeah, I think Riri being as innocent in this whole story as she is the big part of the war with Talokan. That if it's somebody else, if it's just a CIA scientist who's actively trying to find this vibranium, I think there's a lot bigger chance of them turning that person over to Talokan. Shuri meeting someone very much like herself, who just innocently and unwillingly created this as a school project, and the government takes it to use for their own purposes, where Riri didn't even know that what she was doing was causing this, is what really puts Shuri on that path that, like, no, I can't agree with your war, Namor. You can't kill this girl. You can keep me, but the girl has to go free. And that's where the really big point of conflict stems from between them.
Yeah. And then we get to the final battle.
Which contains one of the biggest surprises of the movie to me. Is the Midnight Angels. The Midnight Angels.
Yeah.
Oh, so they look so good. They look so good.
No expectation, I don't even really have a point of reference on that, but I loved how Okoye and Akila's characters played into this so perfectly. Right from that opening scene with the Parisian soldiers on the boat with Akila and the dual blades as opposed to the spear, that she doesn't really fit with the Dora Milaje, and then Okoye obviously being removed as the general, so you have them as the two kind of outcast Dora Milaje becoming their own entity that they get to don these Midnight Angel suits that we spend the entire movie making fun of. That Okoye continually telling Shuri how awful it looks and then finally putting it on. The final battle was a thing of beauty, though. I think it was very, very well executed throughout, up until the very end. The very end, last scene as they come back to the ship was kind of awkward to me, but the overall visual effect of the underwater part of the battle, of them knocking the Wakandans into the water to have the advantage, the Dora Milaje leaping off the side of the boat with M'Baku's guys holding them up, like just so many little points there that are so well executed.
Yeah, and then the battle between Shuri and Namor when they end up in the whatever the ship, and they're using the evaporation thing, and he's weakening him, and then when they eventually crash on the beach, and just the battle between the two of them, and her getting stabbed right through, and then literally breaking off and pulling herself through to kind of. I still was thinking of her almost as a villain throughout that entire fight until she sees her mother, and you see her have that realization of, I'm better than this, and puts him down, but doesn't kill him. I was just, and it kind of made me, I was like, oh, there it is. There's the heart. There's the heart of the Black Panther that's truly in this girl.
Yeah. The cathartic, the release that I got, like emotionally, because I was like, oh no, they're gonna kill Namor. Like, you cannot kill this guy. Like, he is one of the best characters in this movie. Please tell me he's not another one and done. Like, you can't do this to me. This guy is too good. And then you hear Queen Ramonda, to show them who you are, bringing all the way back to T'Challa during the challenge day where he's fighting M'Baku. And it's to show them who you are scene. And that's how he defeats M'Baku to stay the Black Panther. And it's that same moment that Shuri has that same line resonating through her that makes her stop and just not kill him and be like, if you yield, I'll let you go to the water and we can make a deal. Absolutely fantastic. It brings the whole movie full circle, and it gives her that emotional release that she needed. Mm-hmm. But again, watching it as a viewer, that was the one moment with Shuri's character where I got the emotional release.
Mm-hmm. I think that's what it was built to do, is that we're all so tense from, like, is like, are we cheering for a bad guy at this point? And then bam, like, we're just like, oh, thank Christ. She has that spirit. She is that good person in the end, which I think was being built to either way. But it's just, she would have killed Namor, I think this movie would have, to me, ended in such a down fashion, man.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
And then we get to the, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay, I was going to say, and then we get to the end of the movie. Shuri goes to visit Nakia in Haiti because Nakia has gone back to Haiti, where she's been for the past 5 or so years. We find out that she left shortly after the blip. We find that earlier in the movie when Nakia is talking to Okoye, and Okoye is like, I was hurt that you left. And because we hear that with Queen Ramonda when Queen Ramonda goes to recruit her. We find out that she's left and she's been gone for a while. And then we get a little bit, and they drip feed us the entire movie, these little bits and pieces of Nakia's story. And so
before there, the one thing I'll say is Shuri not showing up to getting to fighting for the crown was, I think, the best part. And M'Baku just coming off the ship, and essentially they're saying, this is the new king of Wakanda. It's M'Baku. All in my head I was like, thank you, Christ. It's M'Baku being the king. Now, I was so happy. It was right in the middle of that whole little piece. I was just like, oh, thank you.
And I mean, that just shows a seismic shift in Wakandan culture then, that for the first time, your king is no longer going to be your protector.
So yeah, there's the king, and then there's the protector. Yeah.
I do like that. And M'Baku has spent this entire movie being like just this force for he's being this force for political advisor. He spent the entire movie doing that, whether it be with the elders or whether it be just one-on-one him and Shuri. That scene with him and Shuri is so great after Queen Ramonda dies. And he's talking to her and they have that little one-on-one. And he knows that he's kind of like, soft stepping it with her and being very careful, but also trying to push her in the right direction. And she's not having any of it.
Yeah.
His character, I could spend hours talking about his character in this movie because he was absolutely fantastic.
The big thing that stood out for me too was it almost at times bordered on feeling like a love interest between M'Baku and Shuri. And I'm glad they never really pursued or pushed it, but it felt like that's where we were going, especially after the death of Queen Ramonda, when they have the meeting at the funeral rites and the meeting afterwards. And then when she drops in and reveals the Black Panther suit for the first time, and like stands and demands that he's going to do what she tells him to do, was kind of that turning point where you realize, no, this isn't a romantic angle. This is entirely a political angle for him and her at this point. But his arc from the first Black Panther movie through the Avengers Infinity War Endgame battles basically to now, he's grown so much into this role as the leader that it makes sense that this is where he is at the end of the day.
Yeah, he was leading his own people he was leading the Jabari people on his own, so he felt like a leader in the beginning, but he felt like a little bit of a villainous leader. But he has that heart that he shows when he pays back T'Challa for not killing him. He puts him in the snow. He goes ahead and takes care of him. And in this movie, it's all about telling the same jokes and being that leader, but also knowing his place.
Yeah, I saw him. I know you said to a romantic thing. I saw it like I can understand but I saw him trying to be a brother or be that, like not be T'Challa, but be a person like T'Challa to Shuri. I thought that's more to what I felt about the two of them, is that he was just trying to be there and be almost like a big brother to her.
That's fair. Yeah, I mean, it's
love in the end. There's love there in the end, but I didn't feel it as romantic. I felt it as that kinship of bonding over grief and trying to support each other.
Absolutely. Like I can get the differentiation there, and at the end of the day, that's definitely how it came out more in hindsight. But through the different points in the movie, it felt
I understand that
it's trying to get with her. And given just cinematic history in general, usually you have a love story of some kind playing out. And this was a movie where we didn't really have that in this movie. They stayed away from it. This was a movie that really felt like it was built on female power and female strength. It was a very female lead heavy, with Queen Ramonda, with Okoye, with Nakia, with Shuri, with Riri. You had a lot of that playing out, and the villain being the man who's trying to just overpower all of them. So it was a really well done movie overall. The end part with the reveal with Nakia back in Haiti. Again, like Ed said, we had the little sprinkles, the breadcrumbs throughout of the different things of like, why did you leave for Haiti? Why did you not come to the funeral? Why? And then there's a point right around the time that they're creating the herb where Nakia tells Shuri, you should come back to my place in Haiti when this is all done. And that's where we get to at the end. We get Shuri actually burning her funeral garments, which she didn't do at the beginning of the movie, having that release for herself. And then the reveal of Nakia's son.
Yeah. I had a feel like I was like, there's no way that this guy didn't have a kid, but then there's no reveal the entire movie. I'm like, well, I guess it's just Shuri is the only one left in the line. At the end of the kid, I really didn't.
Yeah, we get the reveal of Toussaint as his Haitian name, but in reality, he Allah. In line for the, I love the reaction from Shuri. It's a little bit of outrage. It's a little bit of pain. It's a little bit of happiness, because she has a line towards the end of the movie. I think she's talking to M'Baku. It's either M'Baku or Namor. And she talks about how nobody knows her anymore. Like, she's the only one left. Everybody, everybody's gone. And she's by herself. And in that moment, she realizes she's not. That she has this other nephew. And
but she and her brother's not completely gone. That is the biggest thing you kind of take from that, is that her brother lives on.
And just understanding for her of Nakia's reasons. Like, I think there was a piece of blame there specifically from Ramonda, but I think it kind of resonated in Shuri as well, that Nakia abandoned them. Nakia disappeared. She left Wakanda. She never came home. She didn't even come back for T'Challa's funeral. It was a big deal there. And just that release for her at the end to be like, oh, this is why my brother wanted this. I can't blame you for doing what my brother asked you to do.
Yeah. And that, folks, was Black Panther. I mean, it's an unbelievably beautiful movie, and it's so great. But I'll say this. Like a couple other Phase 4 movies, it's not something I'm dying to go back to watch again.
I look forward to watching it again when it eventually comes to Disney Plus. It's not one I want to go back and sit in the theater again, like I did for Spider-Man, and like I did for other movies, like I did for Winter Soldier when it came out. It's such an amazing movie. This is one where I'm like, I'm going to enjoy it on rewatches as I regularly do with Marvel. I'll do marathons through rewatching a lot of it. But this isn't one I'm going to go pay for again. I'm happy I paid for it, saw it on opening night, didn't get anything spoiled for me. I was so happy to see it, and I absolutely thought it was wonderful. But again, it's something I'm going to watch when Disney Plus comes out. I'll watch it again. It'll be part of my regular rotation, but it's not one I'm going to just pick out and just watch like I do like a Winter Soldier or a couple other movies that I just watch out of the blue for no reason.
Yeah, it's such an emotionally powerful and emotionally draining movie. I don't think you can just pull a movie like this willingly and sit there and just bring yourself to that emotional crest on a consistent basis with this. I think it's one where it fits the story, it fits the narrative. It makes sense to always keep it in the rotation because there's a lot in this movie that's going to play out going forward. The Ironheart stuff. We didn't even talk about the Valentina de la Fontaine stuff in this movie. The Okoye Midnight Angel stuff that's going to be there. Obviously the Namor and Talokan stuff is going to keep playing out. There's so much here that's important to the story. You can't just skip this movie in rotation. It's definitely going to be an important part going into Phase 5 and Phase 6. But yeah, it's not one that I'm going to be able to pull out and just sit down and be like, you know what? I want a good cry today. Let me just sit down and bawl at Chadwick's funeral.
That's essentially, if I need to cry, that's why I'm going to watch this movie. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, no, I went with someone else who ended up tearing up throughout numerous different times. I saw them wiping their eyes and clearing their vision and stuff. That it was a very emotional movie. So was it worth a rewatch? Absolutely. Is it something that I can be strong enough to rewatch consistently? No.
And so now we'll go ahead. I'm going to talk a little bit, since this is the second to last full-fledged MCU movie in Phase 4, and it is the second to last picture of any type in Phase 4 that we're going to get from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because the last two things left are the holiday special for the Guardians of the Galaxy, and then Quantumania will end Phase 4.
I believe Quantumania is the start of 5.
Nope, Quantumania isn't it? Is Quantumania? Is it really?
It's the start of 5, yeah.
Okay,
because it's supposed to start. Okay. Really, like you intro Kang and Loki, but this is the Kang, like the start, the Phase 5 to the leading up to Kang Dynasty. So, yeah. So this is what the last full movie, yeah.
Okay, so this was the last full movie, and then all we have is Guardians. I thought we had Ant-Man left too, but
No, all we got left.
Usually he ends it, but yeah. So what do you?
So we're going to go ahead and let's go ahead and let's rank the movies. We just spent a bunch of time talking about Black Panther 2. So let's go ahead and let's rank them Phase 4 movies. So we're going to go ahead
from
with
bottom
Andre,
to top or top to bottom.
Yeah, I'm going to go bottom to top. I'm going to go 7th to 1st.
Let's all start at the bottom. Let's all start at the bottom because I think these are going to be relatively all the same at the bottom. I think our tops are a lot different. Actually, I can tell you our tops are all very different. But
yeah. So I guess I'll go first. My 7th is Black Widow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I have Thor: Love and Thunder. I despise Love and Thunder. I don't like it. It's at the bottom of my MCU pile. I think it's worse than Thor: The Dark World.
For me, Black Widow being the bottom doesn't mean I hate it. It's just out of all these 70s movies, it's the one that I had the least feeling towards. So it's just like it's there for me personally.
I have Black Widow at the bottom as well. Just looking back and trying to rank them, it's the one that had the least lasting memory, the least impact on the overall universe to me. Obviously, we got Yelena, who's going to play out. We don't know what the future for Taskmaster is, but the overall feeling I was left with after watching Black Widow was the lowest ranking of this phase. And again, it doesn't mean I hate it. It doesn't mean it was an awful movie. It's a Marvel movie. There's not much in terms of Marvel movies that I genuinely will dislike or hate. Just it wasn't great, and it wasn't better than anything else we saw.
Yeah.
In the 6th spot, I have Black Widow here. I have Black Widow. I enjoyed Black Widow. It wasn't great. It wasn't terrible. I think if we had this 5 years earlier, it would have been a hell of a lot better.
Yeah,
but at the same time,
it should have came out when it was in the timeline.
Yeah, I get why it is where it is, but I enjoyed it. I mean, Scarlett Johansson playing that character is great. It was fine. It was a good, enjoyable time, but again, not like I said with some of the other movies, not something I'm dying to go back and watch again.
I can agree with that one.
Yeah, the 6 slots where I have Eternals.
Me too.
Yeah,
me too.
Very much enjoyed the movie, enjoyed the story, enjoyed the lore. It just wasn't necessarily a visual masterpiece. It wasn't an action masterpiece. It wasn't really anything spectacular in and of itself, but it introduced some new pieces and some new characters, and it left me. It is one that I would like to go back and rewatch. I haven't watched it since the original release in theaters, and it's one that I'm interested in going back and trying to pick apart a little bit more and look for more in and just get a little bit a better memory out of.
Yeah, for me personally, like Eternals, like I have my biggest gripe with it is how far I've read a lot of the Eternals comics over the years, and how it deviated from the comics. I know Marvel deviates from comics a lot, but this one just took a complete left turn with a lot of none of it is, and that's where this one really, this one at least gave me kind of a story at least that I liked better than Black Widow. That's why I rank it above it. But it's for me how far it was a departure from the comics and how they took certain people out. That's where it really lost me.
In the 5 spot, Cody.
That's where I have Thor: Love and Thunder. Contrasted to Ed, I do actually believe this is better than Thor 2, but it wasn't fantastic. I think Gore the God Butcher was a very, very well done villain. I think his reasons, his story, his portrayal by Christian Bale were all something that elevated this movie maybe somewhere that it didn't necessarily deserve to be. I think some of the Taika Waititi humor failed to hit. I felt like there were points in this movie that didn't necessarily need to be there and didn't really serve a purpose in the overarching of the movie. But the visual spectacle, the action scenes, the villain himself, and the Lady Thor or Mighty Thor of Jane Foster really kind of elevated. And Valkyrie, Valkyrie's portrayal is always something that will elevate a movie for me.
Yeah, I got Thor: Love and Thunder in the same spot at number 5. Like, I had a fun time with this movie. Like, I think it's one of the best movies in the Marvel Universe? No. But did I have a great time watching it? Yeah, the fun. I love the comedy. You'll see if we talk about TV shows, I like the comedy. The comedy really hits for me in a lot of this stuff. And that's what really made me enjoy this movie. I thought Christian Bale's God the God Butcher was great. And do I wish there was more and we could show other than we only seen slaughter the first gods in the movie. Would I have liked to see a little, maybe a montage of him just going through certain gods, slaughtering them? Oh, yes, I would. The way he worked, especially when he was across from the children in that, and they're in the cage at that one point, character came off so, like, in a way sinister in the weirdest way, but it was satisfying.
And in the 5 spots where I have the Eternals, we've basically said all there is to say about the Eternals. I enjoyed this more than I thought I was going to, and at the end of the day, I think it's going to be interesting to see where these characters go from there. Whereas with all the other movies that I have below it, the characters are pretty much, with the exception of 1 or 2, the main characters aren't really returning. Like in Thor: Love and Thunder, I think we're ending the time for a lot of those main characters in Thor: Love and Thunder. In Black Widow, we're gonna get Yelena Belova some more, but obviously, Scarlett's gone for the foreseeable future until we get to Secret Wars.
Yeah.
And things like that. In the 4 spot, this is where I have Multiverse of Madness. I thought there was a lot they could have done with Multiverse of Madness. I think the thing that hurts this movie the most for me was the sandbox was so open that so much could happen that adaptations hurt this movie for me more than the movie did. I think they did a great job making a movie, but I think the idea of what could happen was so out there that I think I ruined it for myself. And I also think it was a pretty big cop-out killing off the 838 Illuminati to introduce them just to kill them.
Yeah.
So for me, that shot this one down a whole bunch for me.
Yeah, I have Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness in the same spot at number 4, where I look at it as, like, I don't look at it kind of negatively. I had my ideas going in the movie, but I have that for every single movie I go in and watch, like every one of these comic book movies. And I try to, before I go in, kind of just leave all my expectations and everything I built in my head at the door, and I go in and just enjoy the movie and then think about it afterwards. And I had a great time. Like, I love the fact that they brought was it John Krasinski in to be Mr. Fantastic in this. It just, and then bringing Patrick Stewart back to be essentially 90s cartoon Professor X in this, in the yellow chair and everything. I love that. And then I found what brings this one down to me was actually Doctor Strange himself in this. I thought he was just more there as a crux for everything else, in a sense. And like, I feel like you could have put any hero in there if they knew magic. If any magic hero that could do magic could kind of be in his spot, and it really wouldn't change the movie that much, in my personal opinion. And then the whole Wanda of it all, I after watching WandaVision and then watching this, I was like, I felt like they did her dirty, in a sense, and making just like, oh, she's back out right off top. It was just like, yeah.
And then for my spot for here is where I put Shang-Chi. I was a little bit higher on Doctor Strange. Shang-Chi, for me, it was a great movie. It was great fun. It was a lot of really cool reveals and different pieces of the lore and the history, and the 10 rings themselves felt a little weak to me. The power you get from it felt like he was basically the same guy all throughout the movie, and then just manages to get these 10 rings that he's just he's not really on that superhero level to me in an overall arcing manner. It's more of just a guy battling his own demons with a lot of martial arts training, so it didn't really hit as hard. Again, though, it has a lot of pieces that will play out in the future for us with the 10 rings and the whole arc with his sister and everything playing out there.
Yeah. In the 3 spot, Cody, we'll go back to you for this one.
This is where I have Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. It was top 2 for me until yesterday, but the overall portrayal of this movie, again, I went into it with very high expectations, but I did temper my expectations at the door and just let it play out in its own. The Illuminati reveal was really, really awesome. With John Krasinski played that role, as everybody had fan casted him for so many years into that role, for him to come and do it for that one off. And even though he says he's not going to be back in that role, it at least leaves a possibility that we could see him again in a future incarnation in a Secret Wars kind of universe. The way that they were introduced and used to amplify just how strong Wanda was something that really made sense as to why they would do it like that. That, you know, they weren't expecting her to be as strong as she was in their own, like in their own universe. They didn't think she was as strong as she could be. And a lot of the different visuals of the jumping through the portals, the Doctor Strange as his character arc of, you know, trying not to be that Strange we see at the beginning, the portrayal by Benedict Cumberbatch of playing, was it 4 or 5 different incarnations of Doctor Strange in that as well? Yeah, because you had the one at the beginning, you have the actual version of him, you have the version in the Dark Dimension, and then you have just the brief portrayal of the Illuminati Strange. So there's multiple different ways of him playing that same character. Was really a highlight for me of just his range as an actor to be able to do all of those roles. It definitely hit a lot harder and made a lot more of an impact on me as a fan.
Andre?
I for me in the 3rd spot, it's Black Panther. I'm not going to go too much into it. We just literally just talked about this so much, but this one it just came just shy of the other 2 for me. It's this beautiful story again, like we said. It's just the other 2, I think, just pulled at me more from the heartstrings. So, yeah.
Speaking of pulling strings, in my 3rd spot, I have No Way Home. No Way Home, the more I watch it, the less I have that emotional connection to it. I feel like it's weird as a Marvel movie. When I left the theater, I thought it was the greatest thing Marvel's ever done. I thought it was the most ambitious swing at anything they could do, and they did a really good job pulling it all off. And then the more I watch it, the more I'm like, yeah, it's a fun movie. It's good. It's all right. But I don't. Again, I'm going to say it again. It's a movie I'm not dying to go rewatch again. I wanted to watch it once or twice. I was like, oh my God, this is great. And then beyond that, it's just kind of, it keeps falling off with every time I watch it. It just gets a little bit more, all right, it's a good movie. So that's why I have Spider-Man 3, No Way Home, sitting there. For my number 2, we just talked about it. I have Wakanda Forever as my number 2.
Yeah, that's me as well. My number 2 is where I have Wakanda Forever sitting. It couldn't live up to my number 1, but it was, you know, we spoke at length about it, but it was definitely one that's going to last in the memory for a long time.
Yeah. For me at number 2, it's Shang-Chi and Legend of 10 Rings. I look at this movie, I've watched it 4, 5, 6 times now, maybe. I very much enjoyed the characters in this movie. Everybody just plays their characters so well. Yes, I look again. I'm a comic book nerd, and I look at certain things from the 10 Rings and how they morph the father character into a couple of different characters into that character, because you couldn't do Fu Manchu. It just you couldn't do Fu Manchu. So I like the way that they took it and made his father who it was, and it's just I can't remember the guy who played his father in the movie, but he he's he's a legendary actor back overseas in China, and he shows why he's so good as the villain, and he's so good. Again, it's another one where yes, it's a one and done villain, but he's so indelible in that movie and just really, really hooks you in. And then I look at Shang-Chi and I look at everything going forward, and it just makes me excited for what comes next for that character, especially because I think he's so different from a lot of other characters in a sense to me personally.
And then in our number one spots, Andre?
For me, it's Spider-Man No Way Home. Like Ed said, I came out of the theater going, this is the best thing Marvel's ever done. And I still feel that way because you took history in those first 5 Spider-Man movies and you kind of crux it all together into this like perfect story of now, in a sense, the greatest villain that Tom Holland's Peter Parker has ever faced is now also Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin. And you had him battle all these people like Doc Ock, his showing up early, like as the first like big villain to show up, and then having Green Goblin come in through there, I think was this like it shows it played to every fandom I have, and it worked on such a level. And then to end the way you do in kind of such it's not a down fashion, but in a fashion of nobody knows who he is anymore. It feels very episode 5 in a way where you kind of leave it going. You're so high, and then it kind of drops your heart out in a sense that he's alone. It's not episode 5, but it gives you that feeling of, oh, what's next? And then the symbiote's coming with the post-credit scene. It was just like, yep, I like it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on the same page with No Way Home there as my number one. Again, left the theater with that high level of, this is a work of art. This is a masterpiece. This is the greatest superhero thing I've ever seen. Bringing all 3 Spider-Man together, bringing in some of the best villains from the history of 3 different incarnations of Spider-Man, being able to play it as well as they did, put it all together. Doctor Strange's minuscule part in it, and the scenes where he is there just kind of advances the story completely, but also just really advances Spider-Man's character. I've watched it. It's the only Marvel movie to this point that I have actually went back and rewatched in a theater because it was that good. Usually I watch it once in the theater, and then I'll watch it multiple times when it's on home release.
I did the same thing.
It's the only one that I've went back to the theater specifically for, because I enjoyed it that much. And on the rewatch in the theater, it still hit just as hard. The moment where Doc Ock's tentacle comes up off the bridge, the moment where you get the Green Goblin's bomb and the laughter, the moment where you get Toby and Andrew coming through. When they come through their portal, still pulls at their heartstring. When Toby turns around to the portal, when Ned opens it up, I still get that. Like it's him. It's hard, and every little piece of it. And this movie, setting up and leading into Multiverse of Madness, I think was such a key part in playing that high expectation we all had for Multiverse, because it laid that groundwork of being able to pull from past franchises, pull from past works. And we all kind of went into Multiverse expecting that they were going to do that same thing, pull like a Chris Evans Human Torch, pull a Jessica Alba Invisible Girl, pull from everywhere in the past that we've had different Marvel works, and Edward Norton, Hulk, whoever else you can think of from a past Marvel work.
Eric Bana Hulk.
Yeah, and that's where Multiverse missed, and No Way Home hit a home run on every single piece, including the Tom Hardy Venom post-credit scene.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, just to close out phase 4, I have Shang-Chi. The reason why I have Shang-Chi so high is because this is something I knew nothing about prior to the movie. I knew very little about Shang-Chi. I knew very little about the 10 Rings and Wenwu, being a character that was created by Marvel movies, but as you said, Fu Manchu and the whole idea. And I fell in love with this movie. I left the cinema going, this may be the best at the time, the best thing I've ever seen Marvel do, because it was just so surprising. It's the first movie that shocked me at how great it was since the early days of the MCU. I hadn't been so surprised by an MCU property in so long. That Shang-Chi just hit such a high because of that. And so for me,
I agree with you on that one now.
We're going to go ahead and do a quick run through if we have some time. Cody, we got time?
Yeah. Yeah, if we can run through them in like a minute or two each, we got time.
All right. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to let Cody do his first, because Cody may have to jet in a few. And then me and Andre will go through ours as we go. But the Phase 4 Disney Plus properties.
Starting at the bottom, just because I haven't actually finished it all the way through yet. I watched part of it, but what I did see of it wasn't really enthralling or engaging, was Werewolf by Night. She-Hulk is my bottom of the actual TV series. It was the only one I really struggled to watch. I enjoyed it, but it wasn't something that I had to come home and watch every Thursday when it released. It was something that usually I was half a week or even a full week behind on each episode. Miss Marvel, love the character, love the portrayal. It wasn't bad at all. It was just kind of one of the weaker overall story arcs. Hawkeye, couple huge reveals in there, a couple big pieces that are going to play into the long-term future. Obviously Echo into her own series, Kingpin, Daredevil, all kind of touching into the world there. It didn't completely hit just because it was so heavily Christmas themed, but the overall aspect of the story was a little bit higher. Moon Knight, loved it. Lots of mind-bending, requires a lot of heavy focus that when you actually catch on to all the intricacies of what they were trying to do there, really hit home, but it was still weaker than the rest. What If, loved it. All of everything they did in that. Looking forward to the zombie series, looking forward to the fact that it's getting a second season. And then I have in the 3, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which I'm a huge Captain America fan myself. The story arc of this series playing throughout over the shield, and who gets to hold it. Is it Falcon? Is it Winter Soldier? Is it the U.S. agent? As well as the reveal and the addition of Valentina into this series really kind of rose it for me. Loki and the introduction of Kang, and the idea of variance was something that was really, really well done. That's why it's in my 2 spot. The Tom Hiddleston portrayal was so well done. And the Owen Wilson edition was something that we're all, I think, big fans of. And then WandaVision, just as the first, I don't think it can't really seem to falter. Everything about WandaVision just lives on at this point as the standard bearer of what Disney Plus can do in their television series.
I have a great list there, buddy.
And with that, Cody, in the event you have to leave in a minute, because I know we're running tight. In the event, where can we find you, and what do we find you doing lately in the wrestling sphere?
You can find me right here at Cody Defoe on the Twitters and the Twitch channels. Every Thursday night, you can catch me on Astrid Pizarro's Twitch channel doing Making an Impact, our weekly recap review show of Impact Wrestling's weekly show. This coming Thursday, we're doing our special Impact Overdrive exclusive event preview and prediction show that will happen on the Thursday night immediately following the rest of our Impact Wrestling recap. You can find that also, if you don't already, on Backbreaker Video. The replay is available the Monday following its initial release.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And for joining us today. I know that you're up against it on time, so I just want to make sure that we've got you fully done before in the event you have to head out. Andre, let's go ahead with your MCU Disney Plus Phase 4.
Okay, so my list entirely differs from Cody. I think we kind of have a big flip on a lot of things. Number 9 for me is Moon Knight. I've watched this series through twice. I still can't, I get it. There's a lot of intricacies and everything. this show does not pick up for me until the end of episode, till towards the end of episode 4, and that's when it kind of started to get interesting to me. And then I watched episode 5 and 6, and I'm like, okay, it was fine, but for me, it's just the jumping, and I understand it's all about the dissociative identity disorder and everything kind of breaking apart and not remembering. I get that, but it's not what I want. It's not personally what I need to see in a show. And all the jumping and switching and changing, I think, is where it lost me. So yeah, and then that's the only of the series that I don't care for. Everything else going forward, I really enjoyed. It's just certain things played to my heart much more than others. Number 8 is Loki season 1. No, there's nothing wrong with this series. I thought Hiddleston was great. Owen Wilson was great. Lady Loki, I can't remember her name, her actress's name. I thought she was wonderful, but I didn't care for episode 1. I liked episode 2. I didn't care for 3. I liked 4. That's how it kind of played for me. And it was a good series. I have no desire to rewatch it again. Like, maybe when season 2 comes out, I'll give season 1 a rewatch just to get myself prepped for what's coming. But that's about it. And number 7 is WandaVision. Like, I think that one suffers from the first 3 episodes for me personally. I was like, yeah, this is cool. It's doing the sitcom stuff, but it was hard to understand until the end of episode 3, where she gets the one girl gets kicked out of the world, and then it starts showing you the flashbacks of what happened and everything like that. It's a very well made show, and again, it is a standard bearer for the rest of it, but I just enjoyed other things much more. Number 6 for me is the What If season 1. This one, it just ended up at 6 for me in this list. It could be higher depending, because I love this. This is a fun, just watching it going, what's next? And just seeing all these, like, literally watching the What If comics come to life in these, what would happen if this happened. And I thought it was great. The Zombies one, I can't wait to see the head in a jar come back in season 2, man. And supposedly they're doing a zombie show or something to do, like, more than just What If. And just to see the head in a jar come back for that, I'm so excited. Number 5 for me is Miss Marvel. I think I related to this just thinking about myself growing up as a teenager and everything, and not being one of the cool kids, and having it kind of be able to relate to what she's going through as not being one of the cool kids, and then kind of being outcast. I know it's very, and I loved the episode that they went back in time for. That one, it showed it was something very beautiful in that sense. And I just found, and the fact that she's officially the first mutant in the MCU, other than, I know you had the 838 thing with Doctor Strange, but she's the first one in this 616 that we officially know that at the end of it, he said it's a mutation, and then the X-Men theme plays, and that's that confirmation that she's a mutant. And I love that they're creating her as a mutant in this versus trying to rehab the Inhumans. Number 4 for me is She-Hulk, Attorney at Law. Like I said, when it's funny, it pulls me in. I love it, and that's what I like from this. I had all the little stingers, all the little things. You had that. It's so stupid. I hate Megan Thee Stallion's music. I don't care for her as a person. But when she showed up, and you had Jessica fangirling about her, and them doing the dance in the office together, that pulled my heart. Having Daredevil show up and being this more of a lighthearted character who he truly is in the comics. Like, what we got from Netflix, yes, is great, but he's not just this purely serious, emotionally damaged person. There's times where he's a womanizing guy who's having a great time in the comics. And that's why I thought this portrayal from Daredevil in this really upped this series for me. And I thought Tatiana Maslany as her just happy-go-lucky character, and showing I don't have to deal with rage. Like, I deal with rage every day, so I know how to control my rage. That, to me, was that perfection of this show. Number 2, again, this is one that can move in this list pretty easily for me, is Werewolf by Night. I watched this. I've only watched it once so far. but it enthralled me. And it's just this beautiful story of this guy. And again, I don't want to spoil too much for Cody here, of this guy doing what he's got to do for everything in this movie. And I absolutely love it. And then the story of Elsa in this movie too, I thought was just wonderful. And then for me, number one is Hawkeye. Since the early days of Marvel, he's been one of my favorite characters in here. Hawkeye's always been one of my favorite characters in comics. Again, I grew up a Green Arrow fan, and when I started getting into Marvel, I gravitated towards Hawkeye because he's their Green Arrow. And just to see what the style they were doing, and then they were doing the Matt Fraction style stuff, using the graphics from the Matt Fraction run of Hawkeye, and using the kind of like some of the style of, and using that costume. And that was one of my favorite runs for Hawkeye, was the Matt Fraction run. I absolutely love this show. And just the bad guys in this, what's the gang called? I can't remember now. The Bros, whatever they were called.
The Tracksuit Mafia.
Tracksuit Mafia. They were the Bros. And like, I love them. And then bringing in Echo, bringing in Kingpin, and making him more comic / cartoon accurate, and showing as this bigger dude, and that Hawaiian shirt. I was like, oh my God, it was that perfect reveal for me at the end, and I absolutely love this show. And I'm so looking forward to where Kate Bishop goes forward with what eventually she's going to do. And same with Yelena and what they're both going to do. And the fact that they're the new Hawkeye and Black Widow, I am so excited for what comes next from these characters. And yeah, that's why it's number one for me.
And Andre, while we have a minute, go ahead and tell people where we can find you and what you've been up to.
You can find me on Twitter at That Canada Guy, on Instagram at That Canada Dude. You can check me out on YouTube at Andre and Melball Wrestling Talk, where we are talking. We talk all about Japanese professional wrestling. Our biggest focus is New Japan and Stardom. We have our shows regularly coming out. New Japan Puto Wrestling Review, which will be dropping this coming Friday, which will be a preview of the Tag League. And then we have an episode of Stardom Review coming out this Wednesday, it was talking about the first 4 nights of the Goddess of Stardom Tag League. And then we also will be live right here on our local establishment Twitch channel next Sunday morning at 3 p.m. Eastern, 3 a.m. Sorry, I apologize. 3 a.m. Eastern and 1 a.m. Mountain Time, as we will be watching the New Japan Pro Wrestling and Stardom Wrestling historic crossover show. We were watching live, and I know Mel's gonna have a special guest joining us, and we're watching it together in person. That's the biggest point. We're watching together in person at Mel's place. I'm excited.
All right. And for me, my phase 4 for the Disney Plus series, I'm going to try to go a little bit quick through some of it, give some reasonings. I have I Am Groot at the bottom. I thought they were cute, but they weren't really necessary, so they're fine.
Forgot about that.
I have Falcon and the Winter Soldier next. I got into it, but I didn't.
I skipped
love
that.
It.
I apologize. I think I skipped that. It was 3 for me.
Yeah. Falcon and the Winter. It's a good show. Enjoy it a lot. But all of these series can move around so easily that on any given day, any of them can be higher, any of them can be lower. I really like John Walker's character in that, to be perfectly honest. I thought it was really well done. And I think they really delved into Sam a little bit more. Next, I have Hawkeye. Hawkeye was never one of my favorites, so this series was always going to be a little bit lower on the list for me. Jeremy Renner does a great job. I think it's a great almost farewell to Jeremy Renner and his character in this movie. But at the same time, it wasn't as interesting as some of the other stuff. I wasn't dying to see it every week. I wake 3 a.m. to watch all the Marvel stuff. Me and a buddy, we watch them right away, straight in the morning, 3 a.m. to not have any spoilers, and so that we can see them together. So I wasn't thrilled with having to wake up for Hawkeye at 3 a.m. She-Hulk is really good. I like She-Hulk. That's the next one. But at the same time, again, it was one of the ones where some of the episodes are great. Some of the episodes are okay. But I had a lot of fun watching it, so I put that next. After that, we have Werewolf by Night. Werewolf by Night is an amazing version of a 40s, 50s monster movie. and I really like that idea. It's something I grew up watching with my dad, so to me, it holds a little bit of value there because of the fact that it reminds me of that. What If, I've based an entire wrestling show on it that we can talk about later, variant wrestling realities, but What If is absolutely massively great. I love it to death. My next one is WandaVision. WandaVision is probably one of the greatest things that Marvel has ever done. It's such a home run in terms of taking an entirely different concept than anything they do and flipping up, on its head, the type of thing that we would expect from Marvel. Not only is it a whodunit, but it's also all these different genres of comedy throughout the decades. It's just fantastic. Loki is going to have such an impact going forward. I couldn't have it any lower than number 3 for me. Tom Hiddleston absolutely kills it. Sophia DiMartino absolutely kills it. Owen Wilson absolutely kills it. This show is fantastic. I love this show. I've watched it about 7 times now. My number 2, I have Miss Marvel. Again, like with the Shang-Chi, I love learning about different things. And I think that surprising things that are really shocking and new to me tend to hit more well with me, and I tend to enjoy them more. I loved learning about the culture, the Pakistani culture. I loved learning about the history of India and everything else going on with this. I thought she was, for someone who's never acted before on a professional level, to have her acting the way she did was absolutely just amazing, and I love that show. And for me, number 1 is Moon Knight. Moon Knight was the most enjoyable, I have to be up and watch this show out of anything else on the entire Marvel slate. I couldn't wait for the next episodes when Moon Knight was coming out. It was absolutely fantastic, and I adored that show. Seeing the DID portrayed in such a positive way, as opposed to being a crutch for a villain who has multiple personalities, showing the truth behind the illness, I thought was really well done. You can find me at edfries12584 on Twitter. You can find me here on Olay once or twice a month doing variant wrestling realities where it's wrestling's what ifs. You can also find me here and there on other different shows covering things like NXT or Impact or anything like that. Keep your eyes out. I'm sure you'll find me at some point. But like I said, go ahead and keep an eye on my Twitter. That's where you'll find out what I have coming up next. I want to thank my guests, Andre, and I want to thank Cody. Thank you guys for joining me on this. This was great. And for everybody else, thank you. No.